when looking at tackles for loss, this is where you do see the current players. Currently, Cameron Hayward leads the Pittsburgh Steelers with 133 tackles for loss, but he's been on the team from 2011 to 2024. TJ Watt right behind him with 126. Welcome to Just the Stats NFL, the show that covers the NFL statistical leaders from the all-time greats to the current players leading the NFL. I'm your host, Ernie Jennings, and we're back to look at another team from the AFC. Last week I was out with different things going on in my own personal life, but I'm back and we'll get back on track with the look at each team in the NFL. And we've been in the AFC. We're now in the AFC North. If you missed the other podcast, go back and you can listen to those covering the different division in the AFC. But this time we'll pick up with the second place Pittsburgh Steelers. The last one I covered was the first place Baltimore Ravens, but this time we'll look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers finished the season with a winning record of 10-7. At home they were 5-3, and on the road they were 5-4, and in the division they were 3-3. So basically just above average. So how does this Steeler team compare to the Steeler teams of the past? And that's what we're going to look at in this episode of Just the Stats NFL. So to start with, we'll look at the coaches. And Mike Tomlin's the current coach. He's been there since 2007. If they have another 10-win season, which with the team they have, I guess that's where they might end up again, kind of just above average. That's what it appears like when you look at the team overall. But with another 10 wins, Mike Tomlin will tie Chuck Noll as the all-time winningest coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Chuck Noll had 193 wins from 1969 to 1991. Those were some big years for the Steelers. And then Mike Tomlin has 183 wins. So 10 more wins. And actually, Mike Tomlin has a better winning percentage, 630 to 567, but 10 more wins, he'll be there. So currently, Mike Tomlin is 12th all-time as far as wins go. So he could pass Chuck Knox, which he he will. Chuck Knox has 186, and Dan Reeves has 190 wins. So I feel confident he'll catch those two, and he might then catch Chuck Noll, who'll be next. But he won't get up to the next level. It jumps up to 200 with Marty Schottenheimer. So that's your coach. So Mike Tomlin's been there quite a while. Let's look at the offense. So currently, when you're looking at the offense, as far as passing goes, it's all Ben Roethlisberger. There's just nobody really close. I mean, Terry Bradshaw, but he really does pale in comparison to the rest of the team. So Ben Roethlisberger has 64,088 yards passing, which is the all-time lead for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And not only is that, but it also puts him at number 5 overall. Now, what's interesting about that is that, the Pittsburgh Steelers just picked up Aaron Rodgers. And currently, Aaron Rodgers is 7th with 62,952 yards. So really, Aaron Rodgers needs less than 1,200 yards, and he'll actually pass Ben Roethlisberger as far as all-time record goes. But Ben Roethlisberger has all his yards with the same team, whereas Aaron Rodgers has been moving around lately. So yeah, Ben Roethlisberger leads the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he'll continue to lead in that category for who knows how long. The Steelers haven't had a decent quarterback since he left. So there's nobody in the near future that's going to come anywhere near him. Terry Bradshaw's second, but he's got 27,989 yards. So you can see almost 3 times as many for Roethlisberger. So he is by far the number one quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. When we're looking at touchdowns, it's more the same. Roethlisberger has 418 touchdowns, and Terry Bradshaw is second with 212. That's your top two. And again, Ben Roethlisberger comes in 8th all time as far as touchdown passes with his 418. There's only 8 players that have thrown for more than 400, and he makes the 8th one at 418, just behind Dan Marino at 420. So that's pretty good. Now, when we're looking at interception, here's a category where Roethlisberger does beat out Bradshaw, but it's by only 1, 211 interceptions to 210. But it's deceiving because the amount of passes that Roethlisberger threw compared to Terry Bradshaw, it's more than double he threw, and he only threw 1 more interception. So Roethlisberger had an interception rate of 2.5%, whereas Terry Bradshaw had an interception rate of 5.4, so more than double, which explains why he is where he is. But those are your top 2. There's really, again, like I said, nobody even close. There was a Jim Finks who had an 88 from 1949 to 1955. But you can see there's just been no steady quarterback play out other than those 2 players. All right. And that, Ben Roethlisberger with his 211 interception puts him at number 23 all time, just behind Tom Brady who had 212, but nowhere near the lead, which was Brett Favre with 336. So quite a ways off of that. Now, when it comes to being sacked, again, Roethlisberger, quite a few. He had 554 times he was sacked. Terry Bradshaw was second with 307. It's a lot. And not that big of a difference. Ben Roethlisberger was sacked at a 6.2% rate. Terry Bradshaw at 7.3%. So relatively close as far as that goes. When it comes to all-time sacks, Ben Roethlisberger ranks 5th. Aaron Rodgers, who replaced him, is already number 1, so you won't have to be worried about being passed by him. Matthew Stafford's the nearest person to catch Ben Roethlisberger as far as sacks, but he would need 52. He's not going to get sacked 52 times. He's something if he got sacked 30. So I think Roethlisberger will stay at number 5 all time as far as sacks goes. Not a stat you want, but a stat that he has. So when we're looking at the next category, which is rushing, again, this is where things change. You don't have, you have a couple of Pittsburgh Steelers that were good. So the all-time player is Franco Harris with 11,950, followed pretty closely by Jerome Bettis at 10,571 yards. And so what I'm saying is, though, is you're not going to see players in the top 10 the way Roethlisberger is as far as rushing, receiving goes, except for one. We'll get to that in a minute in receiving department. But on a career level, that is. So those are the 2 top for the Pittsburgh Steelers, or Harris and Bettis. So when it comes to who's on the team currently and where do they stand, well, you got to go down to number 45th place with Warren. He is the next player on the team that's anywhere near on this list as far as yards go. It's a long ways for them before they get to, actually he's 24th. Warren's 24th, but he's only got 1,674 yards. So there's nobody currently playing. Maybe this rookie they've got will stay with the team long enough to move up the list. But right now, you did have Najee Harris, but he's gone. So he was 6th all time. He could have moved up to 3rd if he'd have stayed with the team. But beyond that, it's just very questionable. And it's not much difference when you look at TDs. for them. Let's see here, TDs. Franco Harris again, 91. Jerome Bettis, 78. That's your leaders. And then going way down, this is where Jaylen Warren's 45th. He's got 6 rushing TDs. So again, I mean, this new player could have 6 in a season and be better than that. So it's, again, nobody really, as far as running goes, for the Pittsburgh Steelers currently on the team. So we'll just have to play that out. And the same with all the career records as far as passing. Aaron Rodgers is not going to break any of the career records. He'll place himself somewhere on the list, but as far as that goes, he might catch some single season records. We'll look at those in a bit. When we look at receiving, you got a similar type of thing. You do have one player, and that is Hines Ward. When you're looking at receptions, Hines Ward has 1,000 receptions exactly. There's 15 players with 1,000 or more receptions, and he comes in right at 15th. So he was a good player. He played from 1998 to 2011. He's a wide receiver, really good. So he had 1,000. Antonio Brown had 837 receptions. He was the second, and then after that it just drops. As far as tight ends, Heath Miller has been the best tight end. He played from 2005 to 2015 as a tight end for Pittsburgh. He had 592 receptions. So yeah, Hines Ward finishes up 15th. Travis Kelce passed him last year when Travis Kelce moved in over the 1,000 reception mark with 1,004. So puts Hines Ward in good company there. When you're looking at players on the team currently, well, you got Pat Freiermuth from 2021 to the current season. He's got 220 receptions. He is actually the leading receiver on the Pittsburgh Steelers with that 220 over that time period. And then you have Pickens as well. He was last year, he was on the team, but he was up there, but he was 26th. He only had 174 receptions. So he's gone now, went to Dallas. So we'll just see what happens with that. When we're looking at yards, actually that was in receptions, those 2 in receptions. We're looking at yards. Hines Ward again leads with 12,083, but that does not put him anywhere in the top all time as he is with the receptions. He only had a 12.1 yards per reception rate, which kind of limits him. Whereas Antonio Brown almost catches him he has 11,207 yards, but he had a 13.4 yards per reception. So those are your top 2 receivers. So then when you are looking at players who played last year, Pickens had 2,841 career yards with the Steelers, but he's gone. And then again, Pat Freiermuth, who's 28th, he has 2,190 yards. So he's the only one on the list currently with any kind of yardage. And again, miles away, or rather say yards away from ever catching Ward or Brown. He'd have to be on the team for quite a few more years to do anything. So again, that's your receivers. And this is a Pittsburgh Steelers team where you're looking for some kind of dynamic offensive players. And I'm afraid I'm not sure they have them, and at any position, really. So we'll just see how it goes. But right now, it just doesn't look too good. Now, on defense, you got a different story. You do have a really good defense. When you're looking at interceptions, look at that first. But Mel Blount is their leading interception player. He played from 1970 to 1983, had 57 interceptions. He was the number one. When you look at current players, again, this is a stat I've talked about where usually you're going to see players from the past dominate the top of the list. Troy Polamalu from 2003 to 2014, he comes in at number 9 with 32, so quite a ways away. Currently, Minka Fitzpatrick, who's been on the teams 2019 to 2024, has 18 interceptions. So you can see it's going to be a ways before he even makes the top 10. Jack Lambert was number 10 with 28, so that's the trying to make the top 10. It's going to be, he needs 10 interceptions. He'd have to have some really good years, a couple years, 5 even, and that's not going to happen. It doesn't really happen too often that a player in this day and age gets 5 2 years in a row, maybe once, and then drops back a little bit. So we'll just see how that goes. When looking at tackles for loss, this is where you do see the current players. Currently, Cameron Hayward leads the Pittsburgh Steelers with 133 tackles for loss, but he's been on the team from 2011 to 2024. TJ Watt right behind him with 126, but he's been on the team only since 2017. So he's gained a lot of ground over the time. They both passed last year. James Harrison, who had the lead, he'd been the top player. He was from 2002 to 2017. He had 122, so they passed him. So those are their top 2 currently as far as tackles for loss. The next player down is Alex Highsmith, another good player. He's been on the team since 2020. He has 49. So give him a few more years, you might see him somewhere near 100. This is where the Pittsburgh Steelers do shine, and it's in defense. Then looking at the category everybody likes, and that is sacks. And that is where TJ Watt does pass Cameron Hayward. TJ Watt leads the Steelers with 108 sacks, the only player over 100. And then Cameron Hayward has 88.5. Those are your top 2. So 2 really good players, pass several all Hall of Famers, James Harrison, L.C. Greenwood, and Joe Green. Joe Green was amazing. Passed all 3 of them. So the Steelers have continued with the really good defenses. All right, let's look at single season play. And again, it's Roethlisberger. When you look at passing records, it's all Roethlisberger. So when we start with the passing yards, Roethlisberger holds the top 10 spots as far as yards in a season. His best season was in 2018 when he had 5,129 yards. Very impressive, which places him number 8 all time as far as 5,000-yard seasons. There's only been 15 times, I say times, because, for example, Drew Brees has been on the 4 times that he passed for more than 5,000 yards. Amazing. But Ben Roethlisberger is up there at number 9 with his 5,129. He came close in 2014 with 4,952. But like I said, he has top 10, and then several times after that even, but quite amazing. And when you're looking at just this last year, Russell Wilson comes in at 34, but he only played 11 games, but he had 2,482 yards, and now he's gone. So we'll see how Aaron Rodgers does this year and where he puts himself. Now, he definitely could break into that top 10 mark. I mean, number 10 spot is with Roethlisberger in 2021. He had 3,740. I could definitely see the possibility where Aaron Rodgers reaches that mark if he plays the entire season. Again, when we're looking at the offense, you don't have the numbers for the Pittsburgh Steelers that put them anywhere in a competitive place in the NFL last year. So when you're looking at Wilson, for example, he just, with his 2,482 yards, that put him at 22nd in the NFL last year. But again, he played 11 games. He plays 16. He's probably much farther up the list. But still, nowhere near Joe Burrow, who had 4,918, leading the NFL by quite a margin. When we're looking at touchdowns, again, Roethlisberger. Now, this is a number that's not quite as high, but still impressive. In 2018, Roethlisberger threw 34 touchdown passes. That's the most he had. And again, he holds the top 7 spots. And actually, Terry Bradshaw is tied with him in that spot with 28. So Roethlisberger for 4 times threw 30 or more touchdown passes. Pretty good, but nowhere near the record. 3 players threw for over 50, and he didn't get anywhere near that. But last year, as far as that goes, Joe Burrow again threw 43 touchdown passes. In fact, there were 5 quarterbacks that threw more touchdown passes last season than Ben Roethlisberger ever threw. But when you're looking at the Pittsburgh Steelers, Russell Wilson, who played the quarterback position last year, he had 16 touchdowns. Just again, not that many. That would have put him again at 22nd as far as touchdowns go. So not too good. Again, now this is a difference. And again, we're going into the past. Roethlisberger does not lead the Pittsburgh Steelers for the most interceptions in a season. That's held by Jim Finks in 1955. He threw 26 interceptions. Then you had Terry Bradshaw in 1979 and in 1970. 79 he threw 25, and 70 he threw 24. And then you have Roethlisberger in 2006 when he threw 23 interceptions. That was his worst year by far, really. I mean, his next worst is 16 in 2018 and in 2015. So really, only one season did he have so many interceptions, So not bad, really not bad at all. When you're looking at Wilson for last year, way down the list. Again, he played 11 games, so that makes a difference. But he only threw 5 interceptions. But his interception rate was super low, 1.5%. So he wasn't even going to ever reach the number. When Jim Finks threw 26 interceptions, it was a 7.6%. So 4 times. It's not going to happen. So last year, Baker Mayfield and Kirk Cousins led the NFL with 16 interceptions, which was the second most Ben Roethlisberger ever threw. So Ben Roethlisberger was a great player. And like I said, they haven't had a quarterback anywhere near him since he retired. So when it comes to sacks last season and all time, again, Roethlisberger almost had the record, but Cliff Stout, quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers, in 1983, he had 51 sacks. Ben Roethlisberger is second with 50. In 2009, he had 50. So those are the only 2 times that the Pittsburgh Steelers has been sacked for 50. And again, not near the record for sacks as far as that goes. And really, it was hard to sack Roethlisberger. It's hard to get him to go down, but very tough player for somebody who didn't really move around a lot, but he had a ability to not get sacked normally. Russell Wilson came in at 22nd again as far as being sacked by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and really not that bad, really. But he was sacked 33 times last season, so decent amount actually. Pretty high sack rate at 8.9%. If he'd have played 16 games, he would have been right up there near the top as far as total sacks if he'd have played the whole season. But really pales in comparison to Caleb Williams, who last season had 68 sacks, which is right up there at NFL record level. So not a record you want to have, but there you go. All right, let's move on to the rushing. And again, you're just going to have these players that just nobody was too outstanding. Last year, Najee Harris, led the team last year, but with 1,043 rushing yards. But that was their best player. All time, Barry Foster has the record. In 1992, he rushed for 1,690 yards. 5 years later, Jerome Bettis in 1997 just missed out on catching him by 25 yards when he had 1,665. So very close. But those are the top two all-time seasons for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And like I said, Najee Harris, who is not there anymore, led the team last year. So when you're looking at when you're comparing that with the rushing of last year, Saquon Barkley had 2,005 yards, which was quite him, and Derrick Henry, who had 1,921, led the NFL by almost 500 yards. Those two were the top by far. But Najee Harris came in at 14th with his 1,043 yards. So, not bad. 1,000-yard season doesn't mean what it did in the past when you're playing 17 games. But that's who you have. When it comes to touchdowns last season, as far as Franco Harris holds the record with 14 rushing touchdowns in a season. He did that in 1976. That was the best record they ever had as far as touchdowns go. Harris last season, way down at 45th, he had 6. Played every game, had 6 touchdowns. So really not that many. Last season, Derrick Henry, Jamar Gibbs, and James Cook all had 16. So quite impressive with Najee Harris coming in at 24th with his 6. Best that they could do. So now when it comes to receiving, all time, you do have some players. You have a player there who pops up in the season records. Antonio Brown in 2015 had 136 receptions. And in 2014, he had 129. Those put him in the top 10 in both of those. His 136 puts him tied with Julio Jones, which amazingly they both did in 2015. They tied the season at 136 receptions. Pretty incredible when you consider in the entire NFL history, they're ranked number 4, and they did it in the same season. So pretty incredible. Julio Jones was with Atlanta Falcons at the time when he did it. So Antonio Brown dominates the top of this list as far as receptions in the season for the most part, holding 3, 4, 6 of the top 10 spots. Hines Ward had 112 one season. Juju Smith-Schuster had 111 one season. And it's kind of top. Deontay Johnson 3 years ago had 107. That topped your top of the list. Last season, unfortunately, again, it just shows you where the offense was. Pat Freiermuth, the tight end, led the team with 65 receptions. Not too good. That's not what you want. 65 receptions as your leader for the team. When it comes to yards, again, Antonio Brown holds the top 4 spots. In 2015, he had 1,834 yards, which, when you look at the all-time record, puts him at 5th, just behind Jerry Rice. There's only been 14 times. Jamar Chase did it last year. Players who have, for receiving yards, had more than 1,700. And like I said, Antonio Brown's on that list. Pretty impressive. Now, when you're looking at comparing those couple of categories to last year, again, it's kind of pales. Jamar Chase had 127 receptions last year for 1,708 yards. And like I said, Pat Freiermuth led the team with 65 receptions, which, there's 32 teams, and Pat Fryermuth came in at 43rd. So there were players on some teams, more than one player so there's at least two players, I should say, on a particular team that had more receptions than the leading receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not the way you want to look at it. You got to have something better than that. Now, obviously, the quarterback play has a lot to do with that, and we'll see how it goes this year with Aaron Rodgers. I wouldn't doubt at all that somebody gets a lot more than 65 receptions this coming year. So really nothing there as far as that goes. When it comes to yards again, last year, like I said, you had Pickens, who came in at 46th as far as Pittsburgh Steelers go with 900 yards compared to the 1,834 that Antonio Brown had. So half of that. And last year, as George Pickens he did finish 32nd in the NFL as far as his 900 yards go. 32nd. 32 teams, like I said. So not too good. And then Fryermuth, even though he led the team in receptions, he was way down as far as yards go. Only had 653 yards, which put him at 104th in the NFL last year as far as yards go. So really nothing there to brag about at all. And when it comes to TDs, again, Antonio Brown holds the record with 15 touchdowns in a single season, and he had second best in 13. 2018, he had the 15. Those are your top two. And then when you're looking at this past year, Pat Fryermuth again had 7. So not bad for the amount of receptions. That's a good, for 65 receptions to have 7 touchdowns, not bad, really. So that's pretty good. But when it comes to last year, see, that moves him way up to tied for 21st. So when you look at how many yards, he was 104th as far as yards go. But 21st, tied for 21st as far as touchdown receptions go. So pretty good. But Jamar Chase again, who had the trifecta with receptions, yards, and TDs. He had 17 touchdowns, receptions last year. Very impressive. So that's your offense. Again, not much there. We'll see how 2025 looks. A lot of changes, but we'll see what happens with that. So looking at the defense, now again, you got a little different story as far as that goes. So you have, when it comes to interceptions, Mel Blount had 11. In 1975, he had 11. And again, the top 10 players, there's not anybody earlier than 1993, and that's Rod Woodson, who had 8 in 1993, which tied him for 7th. But those are your top 10. So again, this is hard when it comes to interceptions in the NFL anymore. It really is hard to have any kind of interceptions that will put you in the top. Let's look at last season. Kirby Joseph for Detroit had 9. That's a lot, really, when you think about it. Xavier McKinney for Green Bay had 8. That's quite a lot. As far as the Pittsburgh Steelers go, not too good. They didn't have anybody really up the list. Actually, you did have Beanie Bishop had 4. So that was the best Pittsburgh Steeler. And Dante Jackson, had 5. So there you go. That was the 2 players. But that, as far as Jackson's 5 go, that only puts him at 48th on the list of Pittsburgh Steelers. So when it comes to tackles for loss, now this again, we come right back to current player. TJ Watt. TJ Watt set the Pittsburgh record with 23 in 2020. So really pretty good. 23 doesn't quite get him in the top 10, maybe 10th. His brother holds the record all time with 39 in 2012, 39, which is by 10 better than his own record that he had in 2014. J.J. Watt had 29. So to have 39 that's a record that's going to be hard to break, even in this day and age, when the second best is 29. But J.J. Watt had 23, which ties him, by the way, with Kendrick Bell, who in 2001 also had 23. So those two have the record as far as the Pittsburgh Steelers go. Last season, Myles Garrett had 22, led the NFL with 22. So not bad. Last season, TJ Watt had 19. And some people called it a down year, but 19, not bad, really. Maybe a down year for him, but most NFL teams would die to have some of the numbers that TJ Watt put up last season, which is good enough to place him third last season as far as tackles for loss go. So really good. Cameron Hayward had 12, so that was good as well. Not too bad. I put him down at 27th, so 25th. So pretty good. When we come to the last category, now here's where, again, TJ Watt stands out with sacks. Look at sacks. And this is a category where some changes are in the process, but currently there's an unofficial record that goes back to 1960, and then there's the official record from 1982. It has to do with the way stats were kept. But unofficially, Al Baker leads the NFL with 23 sacks, which he did for the Detroit Lions in 1978. And Michael Strahan and TJ Watt each are second with 22 and a half sacks. Michael Strahan in 2001 for the Giants had 22 and a half, and in 2021, TJ Watt had his 22 and a half. If you look at the official records, it is Michael Strahan and TJ Watt who hold the record. So that's kind of where we stand right now. I'll have another podcast to talk about the records because things are changing. The NFL is going to allow records from a past league to be included. So I don't know how that will change all the records in the NFL. But there will be changes. And so it will be interesting. Teams that played in this league where the records weren't counted will be added in. And how that's going to affect the all-time NFL records will be something that we'll have to wait and see. But that'll be for another podcast. Last season, TJ Watt had 11 and a half sacks, which put him at 18th in the NFL. No, that's not right. That put him at 11 and a half actually put him at 8th. I'm sorry, 8th. He's 18th as far as the Pittsburgh Steelers go all time. He's 18th. Cameron Hayward had 8, which puts him way down at 45th. But which would have put him at tied for 27th in the NFL last season. So really, again, it might be a down year for TJ Watt, but a lot of teams would have loved to have a player who's racking up 11 and a half sacks. All right, so that's your Pittsburgh Steelers. And when you look at it, offensively, there's not anybody standing out right now. We'll see what 2025 brings. Defensively, you do have players on that team that you can expect to see at the top of the NFL for 2025 again. So their defense is impressive, and we'll just see what happens with that offense. Next week, we're going to look at the third place Cincinnati Bengals in this same AFC North division. So stick around for that, and we'll continue to go through the AFC, then move on to the NFC. So listen up for your greatest players that you have enjoyed throughout your time of enjoying the NFL. And I hope I get to the players you like and that there's somebody that is one of the all-time greats. I'm sure they are. I have started a Facebook page, an X or Twitter page, and Instagram. They're all under the Just the Stats NFL. So if you look for that, if you have a question, a comment, anything, let me know, and I will answer your question or check out your comment or suggestion, and I appreciate it. If you could like this podcast and subscribe, that'd be great. I appreciate that. So that wraps up this podcast of Just the Stats NFL. So until next time, I am out.